Hi, today we're going to talk a little bit about the cub requirements for the Animal Carer badge. I believe this is quite a unique one. I don't think Animal Carer exists in any other section, funnily enough. There's nothing equivalent to it in Scouts, at least, and certainly not in Beavers or Squirrels. There are some elements of this in previous sections, but we're going to focus on this badge in particular. So, as you'll see, there's quite extensive requirements. There's just one slide though here. Um, Essentially, it boils down to having to care for an animal at least 2 months. Um, One of the things to bear in mind here that anything done outside of Scouts can be used for requirements inside Scouts. So if, as a cub, they have, for example, a dog or any other pets at home, they can take over sort of looking after it from their parents for 2 months, and that would actually count towards this. And if they sort of showed evidence of that and that they were taking a primary role in the caring of that animal, that would count for towards this. As it says here, give it the correct foods, learn to recognize its habits, groom, clean, exercise the animal. Um, it is fairly important to be open about what this might be. Um, a lot of people, for various different reasons, both moral, financial, and practical, don't have pets of any kind. And really, there should be no badge in Scouts, in my opinion, that is restricted behind something like that, even something as simplistic as a cub activity badge. So if they show something equivalent to this, perhaps they help a friend or walk a friend's dog for them, or something along those lines, I'd be willing to, as a leader, give this up quite freely to people, because it's not, as important or as sanctified as something like the Chief Scout Silver Award itself. Um, and I think that the restrictions, perhaps there should be other ways to earn this really than just these two main ways. Anyway, so moving on, we have care for a farm animal for at least 2 months, pretty much the same as the above, but recognizing common illnesses and what special care you need to give before and after the birth of farm animals, which is quite specific, but this basically encompasses people who live on farms or nearby farms, or know people who they can help out on the farm of. This one quite specifically can be tied into things like the equestrian activity badge, which is to do with horses. So if this farm animal happens to be a horse, you can actually pretty much double up on this and end up getting 2 activity badges for the price of one. Um, Beyond that, there's not many other ways you can link that into other badges. This is kind of standalone as a badge mostly. You could talk a little bit about identification of different animals or farm animals. That would count towards something like the naturalist activity badge potentially, especially if the animals are located in a natural place rather than some kind of urban environment. For example, a farm animal would obviously be on a farm, which I'd count as a natural place given it's sort of in nature. And that would count for part of the naturalist activity badge. Although the naturalist activity badge states over 3 months, you'd have to do one extra month to earn that naturalist activity badge there. Moving on from that, we have these two are sort of after you've done one of these, so either take care of a non-farm animal or a farm animal, then you got to do two of these as well. Um, there's 5 options here. Some of them are easier than others. I'm going to give you some examples as to what you might be able to do here more easily. So this one specifically says 3 months. So this top one is a bit more difficult to do, but the actual requirements are not too high. It's basically just keep a record of different animals, birds, and insects that are in a natural area nearby you. So essentially, you'd be going there every day or every few days and seeing any new animals or any significant change in the amount of animals or the types of animals there, and do some sketches, photographs, audio recordings, etc. Um, this ties in with a couple of the badges potentially. The photographer activity badge requires you to use sort of a camera, either a digital camera or a smartphone camera, for a number of different things, and to take at least 5 photos. So clearly, if you're doing this over 3 months, I'd say you can quite easily tick off all of the photographer activity badge if you keep an eye on what the requirements for that one are. Other than this, there is also, for example, the sort of, I wouldn't say the DIY badge really. That's more to do with constructing things, but certainly something along the lines of the Our Skills Challenge Award, perhaps. Part of that is to do creative things. So if you count pictures and sketches as creative, I would obviously count that as such. Then that also goes towards that Our Skills Challenge Award, which is part of the Chief Scout Silver Award. So a good one to do if you're looking for those particular requirements there. Number 2, visit a zoo, wildlife park, animal sanctuary, etc. Take note of the animals you see, what are their feeding habits, etc. It doesn't say pet shop, just to make that clear, even though it says Pets at Home is a sponsor of this badge, that's not listed. This is more to do with going to see animals in need or in conservation, more than in a commercial environment. This is quite easy to do. A lot of young people visit the zoo at least once a year or whatever. Again, this is to do with budget requirements and stuff like that. Be a little bit lenient if they can't. If you're in, there's always people in scouting who come from more or less impoverished families, and those are people who need scouting the most. So I'd say remove all the requirements really that they may be held back by in terms of that. Anyway, so you could organise some kind of a scouting outing to the zoo or something like this, and it's much simpler to do this than 3 months worth of logbooks and inspecting your local environment. But if this is, for example, linked in with them owning a dog or some animal that needs to be walked outside, you could just ask them to, whenever they go on their walks and when they're walking the animal, to take some photos as they do that every time they go. That would be a very easy one to do. Third one, the requirements here we have join an animal, bird, or wildlife society, take part in one of its activities, and make progress towards any award scheme it offers. There's plenty of ones out there. There's, for example, something like the Wildlife Explorers is a similar thing to Scouts, but that's much more to do with nature. There's the RSPB for protection of birds. That's a good one. I was a part of that for a while. It's very cool. RSPCA. There's a bunch of other ones as well out there to sort of look into. This is a really simple one to do as well. You can introduce the RSPB as part of a Cub session, and that'll be a very easy intro to this. In terms of these two badges, there's these two requirements here. There's not too much you can loop in. Sort of going out to a zoo rather could be interesting because as it might go towards things like the environmental conservation activity badge, and that's much more to do with recycling. But I'd say that environmental conservation also encompasses things like species, so that should be accounted for there, even though it isn't. Certainly, if you go to a zoo or an animal sanctuary or etc., and you look at their sort of documentation there about conservation, that would also count towards a global issues activity badge. Again, that's more to do with reuse, reduce, recycle, and natural disasters and things. But I think that again, animal conservation and endangered or almost extinct animals is a global issue to cover. So if you're clever about focusing when you go to the zoo about the conservation aspect of things, that would be a way to get 3 badges in one shot almost. Moving on, we have the Wildlife Society stuff. Again, not much we can really loop into on that. But if you're clever about things, you might be able to, for example, look into community impact perhaps. If the activity going on is local or you can join in some kind of volunteering, the Community Impact Stage Activity Badge is one of the more prestigious staged awards, probably the most prestigious staged award. And being part of a society like this for 3 months and actually doing some kind of real impact in volunteering that with that society would certainly earn that stage of one of the community impact badge. Beyond that, um, both of these count towards part of the Our World Challenge Award, which goes towards the Chief Scout Silver. Um, Specifically, taking part in activity about the environment. Clearly, both of these are about the environment for the most part. Animals are part of the environment, so it makes sense in that regard. Moving on, we have find out about the dangers that threaten wildlife and natural habitat. Make a poster, collage, or drawing, and tell the other Cub Scouts what you found out. Again, this is broadly the same as what I mentioned above the above two. To do the conservation, and the same badges apply there. Although this has the addition of making a piece of artwork, like a poster, etc., which again goes towards that Our Skills Challenge Award and doing something creative, essentially. If you do this in teams, then you could actually look at giving out something to do with the Teamwork Challenge Award or the Team Leader Challenge Award, which are both parts of that Chief Scout Silver Award. And that'd be a very easy way to get people towards those badge requirements there. Finally, we have learn and understand what you need to do and be aware of when deciding to own a pet. A lot of people own a pet at least some point in their lives. Um, it's important to make the people from a young age aware of sort of activism when it comes to animals, um, and why it's important to make sure to have an animal that you're prepared for and you can sustain and you have the funds to sustain with food and housing, etc. And that, you know, some animals need more or less attention or more or less walks or come with their own problems, because just like people, animals can actually have, you know, their own sort of ingrained issues that you've got to learn to work around and mitigate. And the worst thing you can do is get an animal from like a breeder or something and then just abandon it, you know, in the side of a road or something, which is what sadly a surprising number of people actually end up doing. So it's worth raising a little bit of activism about that. And, you know, I'm sure we've all had a friend who's gone, oh, I want to have X pet, and they haven't really thought it through, and you just sort of raise an eyebrow and be like, are you sure you can really handle that currently with work and school and whatever else? So that's one that's worth mentioning. That's about it really for the requirements for the Animal Carer badge. There's a few links there to different badges that are related. Hopefully that's been useful and given you some ideas of how to run this particular badge. Have a great day. Bye bye.